squelching, squelching, squelching.
I remember even going to our log house and we had our first food feasts. And I remember, our people always had feasts, to give thanks for the return of salmon. And many times I would see where they would use lake fish. They did not want to give up that ceremony and that respect. But so they would utilize and adapt to what they could. Well, today, our Fish and Wildlife Department has restored, and our tribe has really worked hard to have some of these resources brought back to us, including salmon and other species that were once here and they were gone for a while, and now we're restoring those populations back. Elk is another good example because we've got some pretty large elk herds, and we have a lot of our people who go out and go hunting for elk now. And again, we have to really do everything that we can to bring back these animals that once thrived here. And pronghorn once thrived here. We have a lot of evidence, from archaeological studies as well as from excavations, and to see that the evidence that they were here at one time and, our tribe's history.
Pronghorn, they've been missing from the shrub steppe for over 100 years here in the state of Washington, at least, here by the Colville Reservation. And, for an ecosystem to work and to function, it has to have all of its parts. You want to have a food web. You can't just have, a food chain.
All began with a feasibility study that was done by a past employee, Matt Berger, who used to work for the Colville tribes.
We had a former biologist that had recognized and identified that antelope were historically present on the reservation, and we had worked with our history and archaeology department to confirm that.
He said like 1806 or something like that was one of the last killings that he heard that was dated down in record. Over by Soap Lake, they chased him into a funnel. Like, I guess you could still see the rock piles where they chased him in, and they killed him with bows or spears.
If we can get some more of these prey species back in the system where they belong, not only does the predators have more to eat, but also the habitat gets disturbed in a natural way by these prey species, which distribute seeds and prep the soil, for those seeds. And maybe we'll see, some native habitat restore itself in some of these areas. So you just got to bring those native processes back, and then nature can take care of itself.
We're basically looking at habitat, and if we had available habitat that could support them. And then once we had determined that, the next phase was actually contacting another agency or state that would be willing to give us some antelope for the reintroduction.
We were able to establish some connections with other states that had source populations for us to potentially capture out of. And Nevada was one of those, which stepped up and said if there became a time that we were ready to do some translocation, that they'd be willing to assist.
We built a lot of our populations, elk and pronghorn and bighorn sheep, on relationships with other nations and with other states. And now that we have surplus or a need to reduce densities, I think it's great that Colville Confederated Tribes came in and asked for some more. And I think it was really amazing to hear everyone speak to what it means for tribal members and for the Colville Nation to get these pronghorn established and to build them up.
First effort was 2015.
We got down there and got the trailers all set up. We had the Nevada guys take a look at the work we did on our trailers, make sure they were up to par. Then that first morning it was, get up at 3 a.m. and hit the road. Got out there, I believe it was 3 or 4 degrees, cold morning, and got all set up, and before you knew it, animals were rolling in.
So we have a helicopter that's got a capture crew of 3. They're net gunning these animals. So they got one guy that's an actual shoots the net gun, and then what we call a mugger will jump out of the helicopter, and he's the one that basically gets the animal untangled out of the net, and then will hobble their legs together. Goes like that, and then they'll bring them to our processing station, and then that's where we do our collaring and ear tagging if we need to, and then we put them in the trailer.
Rick, how are you?
Biggest concern with moving these animals is their temperature. We try to keep temperatures down as best we can by keeping the animals calm and spraying water on them, and also packing them with ice. And then once they get in the trailer, they usually settle down.
Once all the pronghorn were in the trailer, it was hit the road, no stopping. 16-hour drive, go, go, go. We got back to the reservation, I believe, at 3 a.m., deep snow, chaining up in the middle of the night.
We scheduled time to make sure we were present for the release. It ended up a 2 o'clock, 1:30 in the morning wake-up call to get out to Tumwater for the release. Crews started rolling in, got them set up. Trailers were aligned so that they'd go in the right direction. And once the trailers opened, out they came for the most part, other than a little bit of, looked like shock from the travel. But for the most part, animals seemed to be in good health.
It was really a proud moment. Long driving, but we put a lot of effort and work into it. Prepping everything up.
I think the first capture we did was based off a lot of other capture work that had been done, and the dominant thinking then was that doing winter capture was the most appropriate conditions to slow the animals down, and it was felt that keeping them cool that time of year would be critical in their survival, because when they get stressed out, their temperatures increase, and then you can experience mortalities from stress and high temperatures. So initially we did that in the winter, and it seemed at the time to go well.
We had animals coming in to the processing station, over 105, 106 degree temperature, and so We did have some mortality that was associated with capture-related mortality from temperatures the first time we did the reintroductions. And you make adjustments from things you're doing and try to find ways to improve on it. And I think a big part of us seeing that percentage of mortality that we saw then was kind of new, because we had so many animals collared. Typically you wouldn't have 80% of your animals collared, so you don't know how much loss you have really occurring out there. When you put that many collars on animals, I think we had 42 of the 52 animals with GPS collars, and so we were able to really monitor the mortality. Since that time, we had, I think, 11 fawns that were born that first spring after that first winter, so we replaced 11 of those 14 that had died.
We learned a great deal from the collaring we had done and the studying of the animals and survival from the first translocation. So the second translocation, there was a lot of discussion with Nevada on results and what our survival was, and the overall thinking was that we wanted to improve animal welfare through the process to the greatest extent possible and ultimately improve survival.
And then you fast forward to the second year, I believe we caught 98, and we relocated them. We tried several different spots where they were utilizing habitat that they weren't prior, and so we used those spots from the first year and then put the second group into those areas.
My tribal natural resource staff in general are just a very passionate group of people. They truly have a love for the resources they work for and represent. So they work extremely hard regardless of what the schedule is, what's being asked of them, or what the final outcome is. But they do an amazing job. They work so hard.
We used those spots from the first year and then put the second group into those areas, and actually today we got to visit one of those sites. We saw, I believe, 22 animals today, and it's pretty cool as a tribal member to get to see them being put back on the landscape.
This recent capture effort that we did, we were a lot lower temperatures overall across the board, even doing twice the amount of animals. So instead of using one helicopter, the Robinson 44, we recommended that they use something that's a lot faster at capture, so the animals could get back to where they're processed quicker, and that cuts down on your handling time. Another thing we did was, when we were capturing before, the animals would be brought all the way back to the capture location, either by helicopter or vehicle, and then given haloperidol, which helps calm the animal down. On this recent capture we did, it was done immediately in the field, so they were already experiencing the benefits of the drug to help calm them down before they were being processed, which we think may have helped reduce temperatures. We cut down handling time, and it seemed to benefit the animals.
It's great to be part of something that's reintroducing a species back to the state where they used to once be, and they were exterminated, and now we're righting a wrong that was done, so it's pretty special.
I remember I was out with my family, and we were digging camas down in by Elmira, and I was walking over this hillside, and I heard some rustling. I didn't know what it was at first, And I looked over and I scared up this small herd of pronghorn. That really surprised me, you know, and that was the first time that I actually witnessed seeing them.
There's some places I hunt, I've seen them twice, both times mule deer hunting, and just happened to see them on the landscape, which is really cool to see an animal that I hadn't seen otherwise unless I was traveling through Wyoming or Montana. The animals seemed to be doing well. We had a majority of them collared when they originally came in so we could track their movement, see what habitat they utilized to help with our management going forward. But since then, they've reproduced a number of times. I think we've 3 years now, and our flight data seems to suggest they're doing fairly well. And they've dispersed pretty widely across not just the reservation, but south of the reservation as well.
And so to bring them back, again, it's really good to see that, but we, you know, they're living in a much changed environment as well, because historically we didn't have fences or all these artificial barriers that were created, you know, in our world today. And we, you know, learned that pronghorn will not cross over fences, that's just an unnatural barrier to them. And so, again, bringing on back here, it really gives us that opportunity to understand and learn and relearn about that relationship of those animals that once thrived here and the environment and the landscape today. And so it was really good to hear that, you know, many people embracing that the pronghorn are being returned back to the Colville Reservation or back into this area of our plateau where they once thrived, and they're trying to do their best to accommodate their ability to thrive in these areas by removing their fences, even off of personal property or whatever, to increase that habitat for them.
And we know that we have some issues, and antelope everywhere anymore will encounter a fence, but we're wanting to work towards pronghorn-friendly fencing and different techniques we can improve here to make their movement across the landscape as easy as possible, so they'll make it to the areas that we want them and remain at areas that we don't.
Reintroduction in general is something that the tribe has strived for at least in my time as natural resource director, whether that be bighorn, whether that be pronghorn, whether that be reintroduction of salmon above the blocked area of Chief Joseph and Grand Coulee dams, but recognizing that there was an ecosystem in place prior to European contact that drove tribal cultures historically for thousands and thousands of years. And the tribe's efforts and the dedication we've had both from our leadership and the staff to try to make sure that while those are gone now, those are reestablished and can be carried forward into the future for our future generations. And again, the tribal perspective is we plan for 7 generations ahead. We don't typically look at it from the Western context that we inherit things from our ancestors we're borrowing for our future generations. So I think that's an important context to look at it from, and why this work's being done now to benefit those future generations.
I'd really like to thank Nevada Department of Wildlife for supporting the project, and it goes a long way in the West. You know, a lot of the agencies help each other out when it comes to moving animals around. An agency that has surplus gives, you know, when they can to another agency that needs. So in this case, they had the pronghorn and we needed them.
The importance of this to me is I won't see it, but I tell the youngsters around me and workers around me, we are making history. A history that maybe 3 generations will see, and hopefully we'll be remembered for starting this history of pronghorns on the Colville Indian Reservation.